In a world where Twitter leads the headlines and the 24-hour news cycle forces people to choose sides, we're here to help you cut through the noise and discover that the truth lies somewhere in the middle. Hosted by entrepreneur, author, public speaker, and regular media contributor Seth Denson. Subscribe, share, rank, and review. Welcome to Somewhere in the Middle on the Real News Communication Network.
Welcome back, everybody. Another Monday. Show 16, October 15th, 2018. You are Somewhere in the Middle. I'm your host, Seth Denson. Joined, as always, by the ever-brilliant Andrew Clark.
Thank you. Happy
Hey, buddy.
to be here.
And Mr. Zach Lewis.
Howdy.
On
how's
the
it
helm.
going? Thanks. Yeah, right in here.
How are you, buddy?
I'm doing all right. How are you?
I'll tell you that in 30 minutes.
Uh-oh.
So I think both Andrew and Zach want to relinquish their rights to be on this show as of in a few minutes because of the conversation we're going to have today. So here's my disclaimer on the front end of the show, on top of the disclaimer that Real News puts on every one of my shows, which is I'm willing to listen and I'm willing to continue the conversation. But there are some things going on right now that I'm going, what? Help me understand. And that's really what this show is all about, right? It's having a conversation. It's really wanting to understand what is going on in the world, and then we can all come to our own conclusion or identify our own perspectives of the situations. Recognizing that in a politically correct society, there will likely be some people that are offended. If that is you after today's show, I am sorry. I am happy to engage in a conversation with you. I want to keep this conversation responsible. But I have questions and concerns about some things that are happening in our society. And I've thought, let's start the conversation here. We will not solve these problems or questions here, or will we? But if we don't have the conversation, then nothing moves forward. Fair enough?
Fair enough.
Fair enough.
So, I love that Zach just put it on a chair that
I
there's
did
nobody
just cut
in.
to an empty chair. Yeah, that's. Thank
If
you.
you're watching this, show versus just listening to it on iTunes or wherever you get your,
podcast.
you should actually watch it sometime on YouTube, Facebook Live, because it's always a little bit of fun to interact and see the show. But
We're a handsome bunch.
Andrew especially.
Yeah. Hey.
But it was fun because Zach is pointing to the chair that we don't have filled because nobody was coming on today's show. So we'll get to the big topic here in a little bit. But I want to start off with a couple other things that are going on this week and over the weekend. So we had a short week this week a little bit because we did our show on Thursday last week because we celebrated
Indigenous Peoples Day?
Yeah. No, on this show it was still Columbus Day. All right, guys, we're still Columbus Day, and that's what we celebrated last week, so we pushed the show out to Thursday. Programming note, going to go ahead and throw the programming note out there. We are taking next week off, so we will not be on air next week. There is no special holiday. There is just Seth gets to go camping with his kids.
Aw.
And my daughter Emerson has off school, and I'm going to take advantage of that. So we won't have the show next week unless we get convinced to do it on another day, and if you want us to have it on another day, send in a request. You may think about sending in that request till after today's show, of which it might be the last. So
gloom, man.
I feel like every show we end up saying this is going to be the last
I know,
one.
right?
Yeah.
We gotta do. But nonetheless, we're still here.
Yes.
So, but a couple things happened over the weekend, and it just kind of made me go, "What? Huh?" And this isn't the offensive one, but we'll talk about this one first. And this is, I knew it was going to happen. I knew it was going to come to this, but I'm still going to probably offend a bunch of people with this one. The Me Too movement has moved into a new direction. Children. Andrew, what happened this week in New York?
Teresa Klein, a woman in a Brooklyn deli store, was shopping when she felt a 9-year-old grope her. She turned around, yelled at the young man. The boy's mother yelled at her because the young boy was wearing a backpack, about 1.5 feet deep, huge backpack as you see on kids. And clearly the kid had turned around and bumped her. She thought he groped her. and she called 911. And I quote, "I was just sexually assaulted by a child," she says in the 911 call.
If you're not watching, I'm beating my head with a microphone.
It comes across pretty well.
I mean, really?
911, my life is in danger. And we're not making light of sexual assault here.
Not making light of it at all, but I am
call
making
911,
a serious deal on a grown woman. Grow up.
So they went ahead and reviewed the footage. Of course, because it's a convenience store in New York, it has a camera.
Right. Makes sense.
5 fake ones, at least one that works.
Yeah.
And sure enough, she's standing there shopping. The boy turns around, and it bumps her in kind of the high thigh area, the high rear area. That's it. It grazes past. And that precipitated a 911 call.
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing if you're calling 911 to say, hey, listen, I felt that there was a situation. I think that the mom of this child is about to assault me and beat me up, which I actually saw the video too. Don't get me wrong, that kid's mom could have taken that woman.
Mama bear.
Okay, for people that actually have been assaulted.
Little offensive.
Yeah. You've taken this to a whole new level. Grow up. Be an adult. What happened when I was a kid? I'd have just gotten slapped, right? I mean, we can't slap a kid anymore? Don't mark that. All right, time out. Let me restate that.
Leave it in. Leave it in.
Anyway, it's live.
Right.
We can't
It's
go back,
fine.
right?
It's
no,
fine.
What I'm saying is, though, if I would have groped a woman, didn't.
As a young man, if you
But had I, in the era when I grew up, the woman likely would have turned around and smacked me. And then told my mother, who would have smacked me again, who then would have gotten home and told my father, who would have smacked me again. But no, we got to call 911. We need the NYPD not to go after terrorists or rapists or people that are doing really bad stuff. We need them to come arrest this 9-year-old for bumping his backpack into me. I mean, come on. Have we really gotten to a place where it is that easily to become offended, accosted, that a kid backs into you with his backpack? By the way, I work with a backpack. Where is my backpack? It's over there.
Let's find this.
We're on screen. I
Andrew,
brought my
you wanna-
backpack in today.
Yeah.
My backpack, when I go through an airport or any place, I'm bumping people. Do you know how many people I have now attacked then because of my backpack?
And by the way, has she never ridden the New York City subway? Because it's a little cramped in there.
Oh, yeah. If you're going to call 911 anywhere in New York, it's on the subway. My God.
I know. Oh my gosh. Really? This is what we are becoming, people. I said it last week. I'm going to say it again. Wake up. Stop. Stop becoming so easily offensive and attacked. Listen, if you feel like you were groped by a 9-year-old, say something about it. Apparently she did. The mom didn't agree. The mom was right. But calling 911 and saying I've been sexually assaulted,
that's a heavy charge.
that's a big charge. You wonder why people don't want to take this Me Too movement seriously? That right there. Hey, if you're a feminist and you're listening, well, you're probably not listening to this show. If you're a feminist and you're listening to this show, you should write to her and say, can you just do us all a favor and shut up? Don't come out of your house anymore. Get rid of your cell phone because you're not doing us any favors. Right? This is killing that movement.
The credibility.
It's just, I don't know. Zach, any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, all right. Let me draw an extreme here, all right? Because I've got a hot take here. How about this? I think in the age of the Me Too movement, all right, people are a little hypersensitive to things, right? I think that's safe to say. Probably not just of the Me Too movement, but just in general. People seem a little sensitive lately. Would we agree with that?
I think that's the whole premise.
How dare you?
All right. Thank you, Andrew. I think maybe this one woman in New York, and I'm not going to say that everybody in New York is insane, but I know some people who live in New York. They're a little high-strung. All right, California. Thank you for that. They're a little high-strung. Maybe this woman thought something happened and in the moment was convinced trauma had occurred. And when you think trauma is a thing, your brain does crazy things, right? Maybe she thought something happened and she freaked out and definitely shouldn't have called 911. That's step one. We're all agreed on that. I think the logical step, review the footage, right? If you don't believe the parent, say, get the guy at the convenience store. Let's check this. Let's check the tape. Check the tape. That makes sense to me. All right.
Yeah.
I get that. But, like, yeah, calling 911 was a big problem. And you're right. Now that this has become a story, it makes everybody on your side of the argument look worse. So,
it does.
Well done. It didn't get us anywhere.
It does. And you know, it's just, again, I have dear friends of mine that have been through real assault. And, you know, we're on the heels of this Kavanaugh hearing. I knew we couldn't go 3 weeks in a row without mentioning it. We're on the heels of the Kavanaugh hearings, the Dr. Christine Blasey Ford issue, this continuous Me Too movement that's going on. And I think that for people that really have had assault happen, it is instances like this that devalue that and likely don't help encourage people who have been assaulted to want to come forward, because now they're going, oh, great, this is the way that it's going to be perceived. And to anybody that is listening to this, 911 is for emergencies.
Mm-hmm. Life-threatening.
This is not an emergency. This isn't even. This is a 9-year-old kid. Let's say he had groped her. Say he had. Let's say this 9-year-old kid reached his hand up there and gave a little squeeze.
You would call the police, not
no.
No, but I'm saying if you had to call somebody, you'd call the police line. Hey, send an officer out here. I have a problem. You don't need to call 911.
No, you definitely don't need to call 911. But you don't need to call police either.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
This is a 9-year-old kid.
Depends if mom smacks him or not. Because if she smacks him, I'd consider the case closed. No, kidding.
I mean, listen, even if the mom doesn't smack him, just, all right, you got a little rear grab and it was wrong, but let's be real, it was a 9-year-old. Can we not bring some common sense back into the world today? This is what is missing today. We have become so victimized. We are creating a victimized society where everybody is victimized about something. You looked at me wrong. I'm offended. You don't agree with my religious stance. I'm offended. You're wearing brown today. That offends me. Right? I mean, is this where we are going, where everything to everybody is so offensive? I mean, come on. The greatest generation that fought against real tyranny and oppression, those that are still alive should be ashamed, and those that are dead are rolling over. This is what they fought for, right? So, meanwhile, in New York, and I get that I'm going to get some hot sports opinions back on this, and I'm okay having this conversation. But this last week, signed into law in New York City is a new bill that says, and we can take on the adult side of this, but we, for purposes of today's conversation, I want to take on more of the child side of this. The parents can now not classify their newborn babies as either male or female. They can simply put an X.
Yep.
Foil caps? Are there any more foil caps around? We talked about them last week. I'm seriously thinking about this, and I want to be careful here. Listen, I get that there is more to this than, I was going to say X's and O's, but it's more X's and Y's, right? I can't make a joke of this, can I? No, Andrew.
It was funny. No, it was funny. It was funny.
Thank you.
I laughed on the inside.
We probably need the little push button to lighten this a little bit. But I get that there's more to this. There's behavioral analysis on this. There is how do I identify and feel, and we're bringing feelings into all of this. And I'm going to come out here and say, I'm not coming out. I'm coming out on this and saying, I have never felt like a woman. I have never identified as a woman. Outside of maybe a couple of Halloween costumes, I've never dressed up as a woman. And if that is who you as an adult identify with in the United States, it is your prerogative. That's fine. But when it comes to a kid being born, there is more to a birth certificate than their own identity. By the way, say, which they don't have, that you are born, can we all agree? You are born with or without certain things, if you're watching on the TV.
Like hands.
Like hands.
Yeah.
That, and with certain DNA chromosomes.
Andrew, don't laugh. Stop that.
That make you either a boy or a girl.
So I'm going to hit the brakes. Let's define that real quick. So that's your sex.
We got to find our baseline here.
Sex. Sex is male or female.
Right.
Gender is the societal contract. That's what's in your head. That's masculine, feminine.
This is the Webster's Dictionary definition.
Correct. According to a doctor will define you as male or female on the piece of paper, depending on whether or not
and
you
that
have...
is your sex.
Yes, and that's whether you have testes and a penis. Sorry, adult language here, science. Or a vagina and the secondary sex characteristics that go along with male and female. Breasts, etc. So that's sex versus gender. Sex is down there, gender's up here. Anyways, carrying forward.
Well, we just solved the world's problems.
Well, now I've just knocked it off. But we're talking
Damn
about...
it, Andrew, you stepped on the bit.
I'm sorry.
Come on. Yeah, what are you doing?
I didn't mean to. But we're talking now, so you don't have to mark sex on the paper, and that's the issue.
There are boys and there are girls that are born. And they need to be classified as one or another. Listen, I don't get, but I can provide tolerance for those who feel like they may be the opposite of what they were either created or evolved to be, whichever side you fall on that. I personally fall on the creation side, but that's another topic for another show.
We're jumping a lot of hurdles this episode.
The process of discussion.
Yes.
So, but you are born with or without stuff, and that makes you one or the other.
As far as a medical classification, yes.
That's right.
Yes.
Why is there any need to continue the conversation for a child? For a child.
I agree with you. I really do. But if we're gonna fight this, I think this is one of those issues where how do you try to say this? There's a good intention behind this. I imagine that there's got to be a good intention in that we're trying to break down some of the systemic gender inequalities.
And not to be general, but the road to hell is paved with good intentions here.
Yes,
you're writing in right now. I get it. I can hear the keys typing. I am not making a religious stance here. There was nothing judgmental about that. Matter of fact, I'm trying to book a guest next week to have a discussion about faith and politics and all of that. And I'm hoping that'll be our show in a couple of weeks. And on the heels of this one, we'll take all the prayers we can get. But I get that we're in this society now where we just want everybody to feel good. And whoever you are. But guess what? I really wanted to be 6'6". I played baseball growing up, and if I'd have been 6'6", I might have continued my career beyond high school. Guess what? I'm not 6'6". There are times when I look at my dog and go, man, it'd be nice to be fed and watered every day and groomed and have a bed I can lay in all day long. I think I want to identify as a dog today. But guess what? I'm not a dog. I know. I hear you typing. I know. I know. I get it. And I am open to the conversation. I'm open to understanding more about this because I don't get this one. And I think that, again, in light of what we were just talking about earlier about us lumping in the Me Too movement with other things, I think that we as a society, in an effort to become overly tolerant, are lumping in one piece of this puzzle with the whole puzzle. And I'm going to talk about that for a second. So I am gay, straight, lesbian, bisexual, questioning. Isn't that what the questioning, right?
Where? Yeah.
I get it. I don't get it. I do get it. and I've said this a lot of times, and this has challenged people that I'm very close with, that pull out your religious faith here for a second. My religion, my belief, my faith teaches me that there is love, and that love bears all things and is all things. And at the end, love prevails, and love is what saves us, and love is what guides us. And I get that people in my faith have done disservice to that by their judgmental way of approaching things. And my hope is that if anybody you know that knows me talks to you, they will tell you that I have never been anything but non-judgmental when it comes to whom you choose to love. That is, if there is a quote-unquote sin from that, and I get, you can quote me chapter and verse of the Bible, I get it, but then that is between them and our Creator, because it is up to our Creator to ultimately be the judge, not me. I'm called by Christ to love. So, now that we've set that table.
Beautiful sentiments.
Thank you.
Yeah.
When we lump in gender identity with gay, straight, lesbian, bisexual,
With sexuality.
we are doing both sides, I believe, a disservice, because one doesn't always beget another. Bruce Jenner, for example. I read an interview or watched an interview, and Bruce Jenner, I'm sorry, Caitlyn Jenner now, right? They asked very specifically, so are you now attracted to men? And Caitlyn Bruce says, no, I'm still very much attracted to women. I just identify as a woman. So, again, I'm getting into the weeds on this a little bit, but let's separate the two for purposes of today's conversation. And I'm happy to engage in the whole entirety of the conversation at a later date, but we don't have time for that show today.
And again, that's gender versus sexuality. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, can we all agree here, since the three of us are going to solve this issue today, can we all three agree to separate those two for purposes of today's conversation?
Yeah.
Yep.
So let's talk about the reality of it then.
Okay.
Let's talk about the healthcare side of it. Let's talk about the psychological side of it. But let's also talk about how our society is currently structured. Let's talk about sports. Title IX, right? I've got kids. Zach, Andrew, someday you might, right? Girls playing boy sports, boys playing girl sports. I'm all about equality, but let's be real. DNA structurally, there are likely some girls that probably shouldn't play some boy sports, and if boys played some girl sports, from a DNA structure basis, there could be a lot of issues with that.
You're talking that we shouldn't perhaps have a female on like college linebacking team as an average. Probably not go well.
It's probably not going to work out well.
Yeah.
I mean, somebody's going to write in and say, well, I can take him, and you
I
probably
understand.
could.
I've seen Ronda Rousey, and that is a heck of a... She's
I wouldn't
incredible.
step in the ring with her.
But by the same token, that 325-pound linebacker on the Cowboys, doesn't matter how strong she is, there is a size difference between the two genders.
You were in the military, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we have an open military, male and female can serve, and I'm perfectly fine with that. I get it. But stature-wise, there's a difference there. There's a difference in the jobs that they could do.
And there's requirement differences for male and female, both in police forces and firefighters, and there are classifications and things you have to meet. Yeah.
So, again, I don't want to get too far out of the weeds here, because I do want to circle back around to this issue in New York. And again, I'm not... There's a lot more to this whole conversation than we will solve in 30 minutes. There's just no way to button this up. I am hopeful that this will start the conversation. And if you are, we'll say, maybe more on the left side of things and you listen to this show regularly, please don't turn me off, because I want to continue the conversation. I want to be better educated and understand this. Because as I look at things, though, and I look at the reality of life, especially when it comes to kids, are we not creating potentially more confusion for the child if we don't allow them to operate in a way as they are born to be known as a boy or a girl. Thoughts?
I would say
Crickets.
this is an example of the extreme of to the far left, or opposite being the far right. In this example, we need to come back to the middle somewhere by not labeling your baby's gender. What are you doing? What are you doing for the kid? I spoke to a physician, and
like today
on this topic, I spoke to a doctor, and that doctor said, on the whole, most doctors that they know are against this because all that does is confuses medical records.
Can I ask you a question real quick about the doctor?
Yeah.
And you've talked to me beforehand. The doctor wishes to remain anonymous. They don't.
Yes. They do not want to be involved in this.
Do you know this doctor, as far as from a political perspective, do they typically fall more on the left or the right?
An extreme left.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Very
all right.
left.
All right. I'm just curious because again, I want to pull the politics out of this.
And even that doctor, what they said to me was, when the baby's born, they don't care. They just want a healthy baby. That's all that they're concerned with. And if there is a physical kind of abnormality, so let's say it's a boy. Congratulations, it's a baby boy. But there's no testes. Then that means they may not have descended. They have not dropped. That's a medical concern because that means they're up in the abdomen. We need to find out why. Or are they not there? At which point they do something called karyotyping, which is when they go in and find out XX, XY. So it's a chromosomal test.
Okay.
And if there's any irregularities there, you bring in an endocrinologist and find out, do we have hormone problems? Because that can be very indicative of major health problems. Is, hey, something's up with the sexual organs, or a female, there's other issues there if they're not displaying the correct, beg pardon, it's not the right word, but the more obvious and traditional sexual characteristics you expect from a male or a female, it's indicative of a health problem. So you want to be able to label, this is a boy, but they don't have blank. This is a girl, but they don't have blank. Let's find out why. I would say by getting rid of the male or female category, you're just causing confusion in the medical field. And that was their perspective, was that this is a feel-good attempt and it's just going to cause, it's just a roadblock.
But again, and I want to restate this, in our attempt to be beyond tolerant, it's one thing that if somebody says, hey, I identify as a female,
okay,
and I'm a male,
okay,
that for society to be tolerant of that. I don't know where I come down on that one, but I understand why society would be tolerant of that. I get it. But from just right out the gate.
But as a doctor, if you're a male but identify as female, I'm not going to check you for ovarian cancer. I'm not going to, it's a medical issue.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so many parts of your life will follow as a result, whether it be sports, whether it be, listen, we're in the insurance world.
Mm-hmm.
There are different sets of rates for males and different sets of rates for females. Not because somebody's a sexist in the underwriting department. Rather, your mortality rates are different. The potential diseases you could contract are different. The fact that you can or cannot get pregnant is different. And so, listen, the left wants to talk to me all the time about science. They want me to get on board with science when they talk about things like evolution, climate change, abortion. Where are we on the science when it comes to being born a boy or a girl?
I think here's an okay place for me to jump in, if that's all
Please.
right. I don't want to feel like I'm being too quiet back here. Yeah. Personally, I'm a relative believer in gender and sexuality being whatever you feel like you gotta do. Perfect time for Anna to stroll in. Hi, Anna. Sorry. It's you can do whatever you want to do.
She left real quick too.
She goes. Yeah.
She walked in and walked out.
As an adult, I feel like you can make that decision for yourself. And the reason I say that is because I don't claim to understand the human brain. We have billions of millions of neurons firing all at once. And there's a lot science knows, but we still haven't cracked that one yet. We don't know how people work. And when you got 8 billion people walking around on a rock, some of them are going to be different than others. I get that. Like, you can be you, man. Let your freak flag fly. If that's the way you want to roll, mad respect. But it's with that understanding that, like, there's got to be a baseline. You got to make it to adulthood. And, like, if you're fumbling medical records and scientists or doctors are looking at you and going, well, wait, we don't know for sure, that's not a good place to be in. That's not a good place to start. So when it comes down to deciding whether or not your gender should be listed on your birth certificate, at least at the beginning, biologically, I think it's safe to just say one or the other, right?
Yeah. I
I think that's okay. I feel like that's not infringing on anybody's rights. And if you grow up and you decide, you know what, I don't feel that way, I'm not that way, that's not how I'm wired, cool.
Great.
I'm sure there's a process there. But at the beginning, for God's sake, right? Am I crazy?
Well, the process would just be societally. You know, I'm going to wear a dress and say, hi, I'm a woman.
Right.
Okay, great. That doesn't affect my medical records.
Right. If you have a seizure in a grocery store and get rolled into a ER, passed out, and they have to figure out what to do, you got to have somewhere to start, right? Mm-hmm. Like, because you're not going to be able to speak for yourself. I don't know if that makes any sense.
No, it does.
No, listen, I couldn't agree with you more on that. And I think that's where kind of the approach I'm taking to this is in our efforts to be overly tolerant, we are now blurring the lines of factual science here. I get somebody else is going to write in and say, well, what about hermaphrodites who are born with both chromosomes?
So I can actually speak on this one. There have been only 11 recorded cases of fertility in true hermaphroditism, where an individual was born with male and female
reproductive
both
organs,
ovarian and testicular tissue.
Yep.
And of those 11, only one gave birth. That's one recorded case of a hermaphrodite giving birth out of 11 true recorded cases of fertility in true hermaphroditism.
Okay, so if you're one of the 11, you're excused from the conversation. You can ultimately choose, do you want to be a boy or a girl, apparently, because you got both sides of that deal. And these are scientific phenoms, and I get, Zach, what you were saying about there's still, listen, science is a constantly moving piece,
Galileo
right?
thought the world was flat when he was born. Like,
That's right.
I don't know, yeah.
And that horrible mistreater of humankind, Columbus, proved him wrong, right? I'm sorry.
Indigenous peoples.
I'm still riled up about that one last week, right?
No.
So we're just doubling down this week. Again, I am not trying to, if you are a human being who is struggling with identity on your gender, please, I am not trying to upset you. My faith calls me to love you. But for someone who isn't struggling with that, a child, newborn child, to infuse this idea that this is yet another thing that you're going to have to figure out, when scientifically they are a boy or a girl, aren't we creating this system that is more concerned about tolerance than facts? That's my fear on this. I fear that we continuously move down this road for us to be so tolerant that we're willing to blur the lines on anything factual in order to do just that. And when we start to do that, our society will look very different than it did when we were children, and it will look and not always for the better. Because if certain things that are factual are able to be modified in the effort of being tolerant, then anything that is factual can be modified for the purposes of tolerance. Thanks, guys. Good show today.
Yeah, hey.
Expect the comments to come flying in now. Now you understand why we're taking next week off?
Let the iron cool a
little recovery here. Listen, again, I know I said it at the beginning of the show. If this is you, please don't take anything we've talked about here personally from a standpoint of attack. I think I can speak for all three of us, is that we want to better understand this and have a conversation. Conversations are where this start. But it's when we start to infuse certain things on certain populace that don't have the control and power to make these decisions or do things on their own, that really starts to create a problem, I think, in our society. And we may very well look up and wonder what's going on. very soon. But anyway, that's that on today. We wanted it to be somewhat of a quick show, but nobody wanted to prolong this one. But we'll continue to have this conversation. Again, this is nothing to do with your I'm not talking about sexuality here from a standpoint of whom you love and what you feel in your heart and all of that. I am talking about the scientific basis of whom you are, and that's really it. So big thanks to all the folks here at Real News Communications. This is one of the reasons we go live, so they actually have to air the show.
That's it.
Zach, thanks for running the board today, buddy, and chiming in when you did. Andrew, thank you for being part of this one. To my beautiful wife, Jenna, love you, honey, and my wonderful daughters, Emerson and Arabella. Daddy loves you. And while I may be considering a number of things, I do know where I land on this. Life as a kid can be confusing enough. First, we learn to crawl, then walk, and finally, we run. We learn about our bodies and how they function, and as time goes on, we experience that some kids are tall and others short. Some can throw a football, while others can grasp the idea of calculus and physics. But one thing that we shouldn't confuse kids about, their gender. What they are. Again, there's enough to try to figure out when you're a kid, but trying to determine a variance in what is factually true may be the most confusing of all. This past week in New York City, a law was signed that allows parents to put on their kids' birth certificates an X instead of an M for a male or an F for a female. What? I get that we want to be sure to be open and tolerant, but haven't we now taken politically correct to a whole new level? I'm not questioning how someone feels or how they might see their own identity, but kids? Well, they're simply just trying to figure all that out. Taking away the stability of being a boy or a girl just seems like it will confuse the matter even more. A few weeks ago, we did a show challenging the idea of alternate facts, and I kind of feel like I need to do that show again. Facts are just that, facts. In that episode, we took on the right and the administration who proposed the idea that facts and truth could be varied. They can't. And now I'll take this same approach with the left. The left is constantly discussing science and what they call facts when approaching things like the life of a fetus, climate change, and even trickle-down economics. But when it comes to boys being boys and girls being girls, they want to blur the facts and instead impose feelings. It's a different conversation when you're discussing feelings. If you are a boy that feels like a girl or vice versa, that is one thing. You can feel like whatever suits you. But to factually state that you are a boy when your DNA says you are a girl or a girl when your DNA says you are a boy is a completely distorted approach. Let's be clear. I'm not challenging homosexuality, who someone chooses to love, or even how someone feels. I'm challenging what you are. If someone who is a male wants to dress like a female, that is your prerogative. People have been doing it for some time, and while I haven't, if it's something that makes you feel good about yourself or that you identify with, go for it. But when we start to alter facts in order to appease the feelings of someone, we begin to restructure life in a way where there can be nothing factual or true. And when we do this to a child, to me, it's just cruel. Kids need facts. They need stability. They need the truth. Finding myself somewhere in the middle. I'm Seth Denson.